Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. The Northwest Territories Power Corporation wants approval for a 15% rate increase. There was a hearing on the proposed rate hike before the Public Utilities Board this week in Yellowknife. Residents of the NWT already pay the highest electricity rates in Canada, and communities across the territory are worried about prices going even higher. The CBC's Nadir Hashmi has our top story tonight.
The NTPC says the 15% power hike is needed to cover rising fuel prices, inflation and major capital costs. This includes the Tolson Hydro facility. NTPC's Chief Financial Officer Paul Grant said in his opening statement that approval of the requested revenue requirement will allow NTPC to continue to provide safe and reliable service to the Northwest Territories. Dennis Bevington is a former MP and a representative for the town of Fort Smith. He says recent NTPC projects have ended up costing significantly more than they were budgeted to, and these overruns shouldn't be passed on to customers. One example Bevington mentioned was the Tolson project. Originally estimated at around $70 million, the project is now expected to cost a total of $115 million.
The analysis of what it was going to cost to do the project was completely out of line.
A representative of the hydro communities of Yellowknife and Hay River holds the same opinion as Bevington.
Deficiencies include a lack of rigorous alternative analysis, a lack of detailed cost estimates.
NTPC meanwhile says wildfires were a major factor that led to this increase. Another Fort Smith official says the 15% hike could unfairly shift costs onto hydro communities. He said a blanket hike ignores earlier decisions that tied rates to actual costs in each zone.
That means we're going to be transferring costs from the thermal zone to the hydro zones. This is another perverse use of the system where the hydro communities are being asked to subsidize the diesel communities.
Hydropower towns like Fort Smith have traditionally paid less due to lower generation costs. NTPC says they explored rate mitigation options, pointing to a December announcement by the territorial government. The GNWT said they would spend $12 million for the next 4 years to offset the rate increase. NTPC said in the hearing that this allows them to propose not a 24.8% increase, but a rate increase of 15% across all classes of customers, minimizing shock. The Public Utilities Board says final arguments are due in May and a decision is expected before the end of June. Nadir Hashmi, CBC News, Yellowknife.
The Mackenzie Valley Highway has been in the works for decades. This week, the latest updates were shared at a meeting in Fort Good Hope, NWT. It brought together community members and project leads to talk about where things stand and what they hope comes next. In a best-case scenario, the highway could be finished by 2037, but many at the meeting say there are changes they want to see long before that. Jocelyn Chappelle joins me now in studio with more. So Jocelyn, how are people feeling about the highway and its potential impact on their communities?
Yeah, Megan, at the meeting, there were mixed emotions about the plan. Fort Good Hope has seen a recent rise in crime and drug trafficking. For some residents, a highway means even more access to their community, something that raises concerns. One attendee worried the highway could be built before any drug treatment centers are in place. I spoke with Satu Grand Chief Wilbur Cashon. He says leaders right now are focused on healing from recent events, but looking forward and preparing is just as important.
And I was thinking that a lot of things we can do for ourselves and to protect our communities, and I think chiefs and councils they have a right to protect their communities.
The highway is still a long ways away. Because of that, many people want to know how youth feel about it too. I spoke with Brian Savoy, a counselor and teacher in Toledo. He says youth also worry about community safety, but they're just as concerned about shorter winter road seasons and unreliable barge conditions.
They were hoping that it was going to spur more tourism, maybe bring a couple some new stores to Toledo, have people have access to building supplies and all of those necessities of life that a lot of people take for granted.
Savoy said students also wonder about how much this highway has cost the territory.
Yeah, where is the highway in terms of the cost and the timeline?
To build the highway, it's going to be upwards of $1 billion. The NWT government will likely rely on federal funding for future building costs. Right now, the project is focused on its environmental assessment. That's slowly inching ahead. The Fort Good Hope meeting was the last community session. At the end of this month, the Mackenzie Valley Review Board will announce if public hearings will begin. Mark Cliff Phillips is the Review Board Executive Director. Cliff Phillips says they are waiting on a final territorial government submission to make that decision. In the meantime, he says conversations are open and ongoing.
We're trying our best as a board to provide as many opportunities for communities to provide input on the process.
And was there anything else new that was said at this meeting, Jocelyn?
Yes, the Bear River Bridge was also discussed. That's a separate project near Toledo that was originally planned to connect with the highway. But now the NWT government says they no longer have enough funding to build it. So attention has shifted to exploring alternative options for crossing the Great Bear River.
Okay, thanks for all your work on this, Jocelyn.
Yeah, thank you.
Staying with the Mackenzie Valley Highway, the Northwest Territories government will now have more time to review input on the project. On Thursday, the Mackenzie Valley Environmental Impact Review Board said it will accept confidential documents from the Pedzaki First Nation. The First Nation has asked for a route change, citing concerns about the proposed path. Avery Zingle has that part of the story.
The Northwest Territories government is proposing an all-weather highway that starts near Wrigley and runs to Norman Wells. Pedzaki First Nation says the proposed route runs through sensitive areas. It asked the review board if it could submit traditional knowledge with confidentiality. Pedzaki's chief Jamie Moses wrote to the review board in March saying they had traditional knowledge to support a route change, but they worried that information could be misused. Review Board Chair Joanne Deneron wrote in an April 10th letter the information would be useful to predict the impacts of the project. Pedzaki First Nation says portions of the highway near Wrigley should run closer to the mountains. It says the ground there is stable and avoids moose habitat. The First Nation says this alternative route should follow the existing Enbridge pipeline route, and the Infrastructure Department now has 2 more months to submit a developer's assessment report. Review Board documents state the government needs that time to review the alternate route suggested by Pedzaki. Avery Zingle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
We have a clarification now about a story we brought you on Wednesday. The Yukon government and federal government are in favor of a proposed 25-year license term for the Whitehorse Dam. But there are more steps before a water use license could be granted to Yukon Energy for the dam's future use. The existing license will expire this year. This week, the Yukon government said it will now require increased protection for fish and treaty rights when it comes to the dam. That comes after a review by the Yukon's Environment and Socioeconomic Assessment Board that included outcry from Yukon First Nations. Meanwhile, the Whitehorse Rapids Hydroelectric Generating Station project will now go before the Yukon Water Board for a final decision on the dam's water use license. More than 100 people packed an open house in Whitehorse Thursday night. They were there to talk about plans for a new elementary school in the Takini neighborhood. Gabrielle Plonka was there.
The location of the new Whitehorse Elementary School is controversial. It's going to be built here in the Takini subdivision, just 10 minutes from downtown. Local residents aren't happy about that. They say it's not the school they take issue with, it's the location and the potential impact on traffic.
And Whitehorse is a growing city with a lot of traffic problems already, so I really wanted to find out more about options for active transport and how some of those connectors might be improved right now. And that remains a concern.
There's a safety side for sure. Like if you look down Range Road, we only have 2 controlled crosswalks with lights. I know we have a school already, a daycare, a seniors residence.
More than 100 people crowded the open house last night. They looked at maps of the proposed building's footprint and asked questions about a recent traffic impact study, which claims the school won't affect traffic that much. Residents said they were mostly happy with the event, but the traffic concerns remain unresolved.
But there are some accommodating factors presented in the traffic report that we think bring it more in the realm of reality. At the basic level, though, it's clearly going to have an impact on traffic.
The Yukon's Assistant Deputy Minister of Schools was also present. She says residents' concerns about traffic are coming through loud and clear.
And I can understand that, but I am very confident the company that we hired out of Vancouver and the table over here, our traffic consultant has done a really thorough study.
This was not the last conversation before breaking ground here. The school is still in the second phase of planning out of 7. Gabrielle Planca, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Week 3 of the federal election campaign is in the books. The CBC's Virginie Ann has been watching the race. Here's her look at this week on the campaign trail in the Yukon.
This third week of election campaign really focused on hearing from as many Yukoners as possible what matters to them, what they want to see, what they want to hear from the candidates.
Housing, and I think it's systemic housing. Crime and the increase in crime that we've seen.
It'd be nice to see some people housed around here and maybe housing a little bit more affordable for young folks and young families such as us.
A lot of people say there's so much focus on President Donald Trump that they are not hearing about crucial topics such as Indigenous relations or anything related to families and youth. Meanwhile, the deadline for the candidate nominations officially passed this week. Elections Canada put the list of confirmed candidates. Neither the People's Party of Canada or the Rhinoceros Party are putting forward candidates even after they announced campaigns. All 4 remaining candidates made a stop on CBC's Yukon Morning throughout the week to talk about their platforms. Liberal candidate Brendan Henley, the NDP's Catherine McCollum, and the Green Party's Gabrielle Dupont also attended a lunch and learn. The Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition hosted the event Thursday, where people were invited to ask questions to the candidates. Conservative Ryan Leaf was on the road. He hit Mayo, Dawson City, Teslin, and Watson Lake. No more vandalized election signs for Leaf after last weekend's incident. The NDP has yet to put their signs up, but they are expected to arrive today. And finally, there's a busy week ahead of us. The territory is hosting several debates, including one hosted by the Yukon Federation Labour. The Council of Yukon First Nations is also planning on hosting one, and so is CBC. We'll have that live on CBC Radio 1, cbc.ca, as well as on our YouTube channel Tuesday night. Virginie Ann, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Let's check in now on the 3 major party leaders. Pierre Poilievre is campaigning in southwestern Ontario. The Conservative leader was talking about his party's economic plan. But Poilievre is facing criticism from within his own party. Some members say he should refocus the campaign on the threat from Donald Trump.
Liberals and lobbyists want me to stop talking about high food prices. Well, I'm not going to do that, because single mothers shouldn't be going to bed hungry, worried about how they're going to feed their kids in the morning. They want me to stop talking about the doubling housing costs during the lost Liberal decade. I'm not going to stop talking about that. They want me to stop talking about the rampaging crime that's overtaking our streets and the overdose crisis Liberals caused that has taken the lives of 50,000 people. I will not stop talking about that either.
Poilievre was also asked about the views of a local Conservative candidate on abortion. Poilievre says there would be no laws passed restricting access to abortion under a Conservative government.
We want to make the case for Canadians that Canada works best when one party doesn't have all the power. And when people have voted for New Democrats, they voted for a party and leaders that have gone to Ottawa and fought for them and delivered for them. Because people voted for us, we were able to deliver things like dental care and the first steps towards national pharmacare.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh faced repeated reporter questions about what he hopes to achieve in a campaign where he stopped saying he's running to be Prime Minister. Singh pointed to holding the balance of power in a minority parliament. Singh cited other policy achievements by leaders who preceded him. The session with reporters followed a speech at a conference convened by the institute named after former NDP chief Ed Broadbent. And Liberal leader Mark Carney took time away from the federal election campaign to meet with his cabinet committee on Canada-US relations and national security. The Prime Minister later told reporters that discussions had focused on how American tariffs are already affecting Canada.
In the last week, there have been a lot of developments in terms of U.S. tariff policy, reactions from others, including China, really marked tightening in financial conditions, a slowing, the initial signs of slowing in the global economy, impacts that we're starting to see unfortunately, in the Canadian economy, particularly in the Canadian labour market.
Carney said he gave officials instructions to prepare the next government for negotiations with the U.S. after the federal election. Markets have been in turmoil in recent weeks, with U.S. President Donald Trump repeatedly changing course on tariffs. As of now, there are still 25% tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and automobile imports to the U.S. This weekend, Yellowknifers will be saying goodbye to the Ruth Inch Memorial Pool after 36 years. Its last day as a pool is on Sunday. To send it off, CBC spoke to the daughter of the pool's namesake. Jennifer Inch has spent a lot of time in that pool as an employee, a swimmer, and a coach. She reflects on her mother's legacy and what it'll be like to say goodbye to the pool.
My parents met here in the mid-50s, and from the very beginning, they contributed to the community. They both did volunteer work. My father was a geologist at Giant Mine for his career. And my mother did a variety of things. Her first job was to raise 5 children, 3 in quick succession, and then 2 following that. And we were all involved in different things. So the boys did hockey. One of my older sisters did figure skating. Another one did Highland dance. I fell in the pool and never came out. And she also worked with the public library, Girl Guides, YWCA, over the years, Sport North. And of course, because of the swimming, she ended up being on the board of the Polar Bear Swim Club, NWT Swim Association. So when they decided to build the new pool, it just so happened that my mother had just passed away recently. And the city was, at the time, the mayor was Pat McMahon. And the swim club and the NWT Swimming Association got together and came up with this idea. And they came to the family and asked us if we'd allow them to propose Mom's name for the pool. And of course, we were honored. So that's what happened. My mother couldn't swim.
Okay.
The woman the pool is named after could not swim. She was involved in a boating accident in her early 20s before she came north. And there was a fatality in that accident. And she was determined that any children she ever had would all be strong swimmers. And she was the strong advocate for that. So we were. And I didn't know that until I was an adult. Pretty much, yeah, in my teens, I found out that my mom couldn't swim. But all the years growing up, we would all pile into the big canoe. Dad would take us out on the lake. I would sit next to Mom, and I never got a vibe off her of any kind of nervousness. I have a lot of good memories there, too. I did do some part-time gardening there. I coached masters groups there. I coached swim team there. My daughter swam swim team there. A lot of good kids that I coached went through, and their kids are now swimming there. So I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it right now, actually. So I'll probably shed a tear and take a few pictures and smile and look forward to the new pool.
I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about their memories in that pool this weekend. That was Jennifer Inch, the daughter of Ruth Inch, and the Ruth Inch Memorial Pool closes on Sunday in Yellowknife after 36 years. Whitehorse will host the Yukon Biodiversity Forum this weekend, and it's hit a big milestone. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the event. It's happening at Mount McIntyre in Yukon's capital. 18 presenters will talk about everything from birds to bees.
It's important because the Yukon is a very special place. That's why I was originally attracted to moving here and coming up and doing biology here because in Beringia it's special, and I don't know. I'm always amazed by how many interesting projects are going on here. Many of them are like out of my ken, like we don't know about them until we bump into the people at the forum. So that's what I really enjoy about it, because there's always something unexpected.
The event is open to the public and it includes a free lunch. It's springtime in Kugluktuk Nunavut, which means it's time for frolics. The Nuttic Frolics Spring Festival kicked off in the community this week with snowmobile races and the annual Frolics King and Queen competition. Ron Tolaganuk is one of the organizers. He says the festival start date hinges on weather conditions and planning can get tricky.
It's a welcoming of the sun, the spring, the warm weather, and this year the warm weather started just on the weekend. It's weather that's making our frolics earlier each year.
Despite the melting snow and wet conditions, Tolaganuk says there's been a large turnout this year, and there's a seal hunting competition taking place this weekend. It's also Toonik time in Iqaluit right now, and it is the 60th anniversary of the festival. It's a big milestone, and to celebrate, we went into our archives. In 2023, the Northbeat team traveled to Iqaluit to help produce a special episode about Toonik time alongside our colleagues from Igalak. The result was a 30-minute fully bilingual show. Here's part of that show, which explains the history of the festival.
Hivulak pami ukoy ngatit chilawak put Toonik time 1965 ngutillugu amma tamanang miutawlaw himayut ihumakhakhiw blutit kanok ekalung miutait amma nunanga pilawaklugu ilitakayaw yuluang mga nunakyawang miutanut.
One of those people was the late Brian Pearson, a famously colorful character in Iqaluit. He held many roles in his life. For the 50th anniversary of Toonik time in 2015, he spoke about the origins of the festival.
So we had been talking about a spring festival for the community, and the other places around the world have such things. And so we sat down and began to plan this festival. I came up with the idea of Toonik time because of the mythological characters, the Toonik. And then we had a big argument over Tyme, and I said, well, T-Y-M-E, it looks more romantic than T-I-M-E. So it became Toonik time, and there was no argument from anybody. They all agreed. So we sat, as I said, we sat down and planned the festival, and we thought that to put the community on the map, we should introduce the idea of awarding people with the honorary tunic, as we called it, because as I felt that the more prominent person that was introduced or brought in or made the honorary tunic, that would be more and more publicity for us and for the community.
Inuit kallunado illuani tuinna khattani angin nami taichumani tunaktai ya ngakhattalek illu khubiaswa tita khattara khimamata inuit taikunu tunaktai la yikum kingun kanne ani saimoni maikokun saimoni ala ngakun katujju khattali la khimani katima khattalek tunaktai la nang tunaktai taichumani Kuwianan lagi dok semuanya. Dari matun saya uwatnya kamu kerja saya terok semuanya luni. Ulumi mon asyik di perdiangan nangman. Saya mau ulumi asyik semuanya deribu uwagun uwikau saya juga nukakti juga saya kunangat. Asyik di perdiangan kata watta. Saya matun saya asyik dililaw kimayong tay chumani akawi awati duak palay daktim tay ko sila may pingwaro ang hatalaw kimayong inuit pekkusingin ni atok supit amalaw inuktituit kamagiyaw lumi mana ikkanayak yak tuin na hatalag mata amalaw Khaldanwati tunok sa hotelak sitin. Sumatuin na uwagulun ni pingwati berjiw jugun. Khaldanwati tun auron makakatarkyu. Tanna Toonik lakinak ammalo ino katigitsia kaswanna pimmariutitaalugigattikko ino kativulluunniin asinginni nunalinniingaartun tungwasuaqtartut villu Tyme Toonik uterteriangalilauqsimajavun maannaquluujiu lauqsungula uvagu pinguartulerijiulluta isaangajuktittun qayiqujisiunguqutta iqitsutalu tamakkuaquluujain taanna Toonik sanngiyuutialua inuqatigiitsianermik ammalu tungwasuatitsinermik nulanniingaarsimajavun.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a great weekend.
The claims period for 2 classes in the First Nations Child and Family Services and Jordan's Principal Settlement is now open.
First Nations children who were removed from their homes on reserve between April 1st, 1991 and March 31st, 2022, and their caregiving parents and caregiving grandparents can now submit a claim for compensation.
There are free supports to help you fill out your form.
And mental health and wellness supports if you need them.
Learn more and submit your claim at fnchildclaims.ca.
The federal election is on Monday, April 28th. Make sure you're registered to vote. If you are, you should get a voter information card in the mail. It tells you where and when you can vote. If you don't get one by April 11th, or if the information on it is incorrect, visit elections.ca. It's our vote.
For the official information you need to vote, visit elections.ca or call 1-800-463-6868.
By voting NDP, you've helped to build this country. Healthcare for families, pensions for workers. And even when we're not in power, do Democrats get things done for people, like dental care? It's because of you. Because you vote NDP, we can make life better for ordinary people, not the billionaires, and stand up to any government that wants to cut the things that we value. Vote NDP and make sure we're there, fighting for our kind of Canada. Fighting for you.
Hi, it's Yaya.
Am I a loser?
No job, no home.
No clue.
Really?
I need a fresh start. No. Hire me. I want to make our community a better place. Sup, kids?
Are you a drug dealer?
Stream anytime. CBC News.